AAMC is partnered with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the American Dental Education Association, to bring you the Summer Medical and Dental Education, or as we call it, the SMDP. And this is a great opportunity to learn about what it's like to be a medical student and a doctor. So SMDP is a free six-week summer academic enrichment program. And participants experience firsthand what it takes to become a doctor or a dentist, and housing is provided, which is great. And a really impressive statistic is that nearly 80% of the alumni of the program who apply to medical or dental school are accepted. So it's a really great program to help you figure out if it's right for you and then learning how to get into medical school. And the application is opening pretty soon. It's always a good idea to apply early. It opens on November 1st each year, and the deadline is March 1st. And so the application is going to require your official transcript, responses to 2 essay prompts, and a letter of recommendation. And this program is offered at 12 program sites around the U.S., including a lot on the East Coast. And again, housing is provided so you can travel to a site that isn't necessarily near you. And to see a list of the specific locations, you can go to smdp.org to see all of the different choices. So to be eligible for the program, you have to be a college freshman or sophomore or attend community college, have an overall GPA of at least 2.5, be from a disadvantaged background or from a group historically underrepresented in medicine and dentistry, and of course, you should be interested in medicine or dentistry. So once you've gained some experience and hopefully solidified your decision to become a doctor, it's important to understand what resources are available as you start the application process. And one great AAMC resource that you should know before you take the MCAT exam and before you apply is the Fee Assistance Program. And the AAMC believes that the cost of applying to medical school should not be a barrier to anyone interested in medicine. So the Fee Assistance Program assists those who, without financial assistance, would be unable to take the MCAT exam or apply to medical school with the MCAT application. So here are the benefits. If you apply and are accepted, you will get reduced MCAT fees, free MCAT prep materials, free access to the medical school admission requirements, a waiver for the cost of the AMCAS application, and AMCAS fees for up to 15 medical schools, and a reduced subscription to Pivio to track your records. And we'll talk more about a lot of these services that we offer in just a few minutes. So combined, these benefits are worth around $800, so it's definitely worth investigating if you think you may be eligible. And again, it's important to note that the benefits do not apply if you have already registered for the MCAT or submitted your AMCAS application. You cannot get the award retroactively, so you have to be approved for fee assistance before you register for these things. And it's also important to note that the benefits are only valid for the calendar year in which you apply, but you can reapply. So once you're ready to start thinking seriously about the application process, the AAMC provides resources that cover everything you need to know about applying to medical school. And these are the only available non-biased comprehensive resources to learn about and compare medical programs. So the AAMC offers 2 resources: the Official Guide to Medical School Admissions and the Medical School Admissions Requirement Online Database. So the Official Guide to Medical School Admissions, which is available as a print book or an ebook, outlines how to prepare for medical school, how admissions decisions are made, how to finance medical school, and details of other AAMC services like the MCAT and the AMCAT application. There's lots of other great stuff in there as well. And the second we were talking about is when you're ready to start looking at specific schools and programs. So the medical school admission requirements online database covers 141 U.S. MD granting medical schools, 17 Canadian medical schools, and over 40 BSMD programs. So you'll be able to find the programs that are the best fit for you. So on the website, each school has a profile, and you can easily compare their requirements, their mission, statistics, and other important information you'll want to use when you decide where you're applying. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, who is going to talk more about the MCAT exam. But if you have any questions on any of these topics I covered, definitely ask us at the end.
Thanks, Janelle. So I'm going to talk to you today about both the current version of the MCAT exam and the new version. So let's get started. So the MCAT exam is created and administered by the AAMC. MCAT actually stands for the Medical College Admission Test. It's a standardized multiple choice exam. It's computer-based, and it's actually required by almost all U.S. and Canadian medical schools. The MCAT is designed to assess your problem-solving and critical thinking skills, as well as your knowledge of science concepts and principles that are necessary for study and practice of medicine. So on the current exam, there are 3 sections. There are the physical sciences, biological sciences, and the verbal reasoning section. I'm not going to go into detail about what the content and skills that are covered on these sections, but all of the information is available on our website, which is at the URL that you see on your screen. So the MCAT exam has a score scale of a max score of 45. Your total score is determined by adding the 3 individual sections together, which are out of a max score of 15. And it's also important to note that the exam is not graded on a curve. So as I alluded to, we're going to talk about the new exam, but just so you're aware, the last time you can take the current exam is on January 23rd, 2015. We will actually be opening registration for the new exam in February, but all the dates for the current exam are still available, and they've been available since February of this year. It is also important to remember that when you register, please make sure to register with the name that appears exactly on your photo ID or your passport, because we do have some people who forget to do that, and it may cause a problem when you actually arrive at the testing center. So please make sure that you fill in your official name. A quick aside, so a new program that the MCAT team created is called the AAMC Hotel Discount Program. And this program is actually available now. And we realize that some examinees may actually have to travel to take their exam and stay overnight at a hotel. So what we did was we negotiated a preferred rate with the Hampton Inn. The code can be found online, and all you have to do is enter that code in when you're reserving your hotel room. But we hope that this helps make it a little bit easier if you do have to travel. And this will also continue for our 2015 testing calendar year. So some of you still may be on the fence about whether you want to take the current exam or decide to take the new exam. So there are really 2 main questions that you should be asking yourself. The first is, when do I actually want to go to medical school? And then the second is, when will I be ready to take this exam? And this decision tree that we have called which exam should I take basically helps to visualize this decision and hopefully make it a little bit easier to figure out. We also do have some more information on our website that helps make a better informed decision. And that website is at aamc.org/MCAT/which-exam. And then also be sure to check out the medical school admission requirements that Janelle just talked about. That has information in there about how long the current exam scores will be valid for. standardized exam, and periodic review is just best practice, especially in a field that's rapidly changing like medicine. The second reason is because, again, this exam is required by almost all U.S. and Canadian medical schools. So that means that this exam really is one indicator for them on your readiness for success in medical school. So we need to make sure that this exam is keeping up with the study and practice of medicine. And also, just to put this into perspective a little bit more, the last time we revised the MCAT exam was in 1991. That was 24 years ago. So it's definitely time that this exam is ready for a facelift, if you will. So here are the new sections of the exam. They have very long names. They're the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior, and the critical analysis and reasoning skills. Probably the thing that I can tell you right now, I'm not going to go into individual sections. All this information is available online currently, and we'll talk about the tool more in a second. It's called What's on the MCAT 2015 exam, but I'll talk about that more in just a second. But the fact is that the test sections are more interdisciplinary, and that's because the test is no longer focusing on just being able to memorize facts and relay them on a test, but also being able to apply what you know. So that's probably the biggest difference from the current to the new exam. And also, just like the current exam today, it's going to be a multiple choice computer-based exam. So because the exam is testing different competencies, different way of testing the content on the exam, we also need a new score scale. So just like the current exam, you'll receive individual section scores. There are 4 sections, so you'll receive 4 individual scores. They range from 118 to 132, and then those individual scores are then added together to give you a total score that will range from 472 to 528. So just a few logistics to be aware of. So like I mentioned, the exam is changing next year, and it will start on April 17th, 2015. All exams are going to start in the morning at 8 a.m. We're no longer going to have double day administration, and that's because the exam is longer. It's about 7.5 hours, which is about 2 hours longer than a basic day. And the reason that the test is longer is because we have added more questions, but because of that, we've added in more additional working time. This gives you more time to actually read the passages, think about the questions, and make a really good informed decision. Also, don't worry, you will have some breaks in the middle there. You'll have 2 10-minute breaks and 1 30-minute mid-exam break. And then, again, registration will open in February 2015. And so you may be wondering, how in the world am I going to start studying for this exam? And the AAC has already been hard at work to create and develop resources that you can start using today. And these resources include the tool that I was just talking about, What's on the MCAT 2015 exam. This is a free online interactive tool. It's the whole content of the exam. And you can click around, watch videos, and see sample questions with some explanations as well. We have the official guide to the MCAT exam. It's one of our low-cost materials. And this is the first and only comprehensive review of the exam right now. And this has information about registration, test day, scores. It has the content of the exam. And it also has 120 practice questions and passages. And you can actually take those same questions that are in the book online to get comfortable with that computer-based testing. And then we're also very happy to announce that we just released our first full-length sample test. And this has 230 questions, which is representative of the new exam. It has lots of good enhanced features, and it's a great way to start testing out those questions that you will see on test day. And our website has information about test day and has Foundation and the Khan Academy actually collaborated to create a collection that was specific to the MCAT 2015 exam. So these are videos and review questions that you can use to study the new content of the exam, either whether it be a refresher or to actually review content that you may not have seen yet. Again, this is free online, and it's a great tool to be aware of. And we actually have about 500 videos in there already and hundreds of review questions. So we hope that you check that out, and that can just be found on the Khan Academy website. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tia, who's going to talk to you actually about applying to medical school.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. So this is Tia again from AMCAS. I will be covering the AMCAS application, which is what you use to apply to medical school, and also the service at AMC called FIRST, which will help you give you options to actually pay for medical school. So I will cover a lot of details, so if you have any questions, again, you can hold them for the end, or just a quick side note, you can always do this at any time at AMC Pre-Med. So just to get started, once you decided to apply to medical school and which programs that you would like to apply to, and you've either already taken the MCAT exam as well, it's time to figure out how to actually apply to medical school. So the AMC's American Medical College Application Service, or which is known as AMCAS, it allows you to apply to up to 143 different programs with just one primary application. So how does AMCAS work? The AMC collects one application from you. We verify all of that information to make sure that it's correct by comparing it to your official transcript. And then we send this one application to all of your medical schools that you have applied to, that you've designated on your application. The verification process runs on a first-come, first-served basis, and it starts once our team receives your complete AMCAS application and all of your official transcripts are submitted to us as well from every single college and university you've attended. AMCAS also sends all of your letters of evaluation and NCAT scores to all of your designated medical schools. So it's important to understand that AMCAS is a cycle year ahead of the current calendar year. For example, it's currently 2014, but we're in the 2015 AMCAS application cycle. So it's offset because this year's AMCAS application is for those who want to start medical school in 2015. So the AMCAS season starts in May when the application opens. At this point, you can enter your information, but won't be able to actually submit it to AMCAS until the beginning of June, which we will then start that verification process. Medical schools will start to receive verified AMCAS applications in late June and will start their review processes, which usually involve secondary applications and in-person interviews. It's important to note medical school admissions are rolling, so submitting your materials earlier than later is a great idea. The AMCAS application has 9 sections and asks for a range of information about yourself. Although this information is relatively straightforward, it is very detailed. So know that completing your AMCAS application takes some time. So here are the 9 sections of the AMCAS application. I'm just going to say them out right now, just in case some of them may be a little unclear for you guys to see there. So the 9 sections are the identifying information section, schools attended, biographic information, coursework, work activities, letters of evaluation, medical school designations, essays, and standardized tests. So, of course, as you guys may see, some of these sections are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll highlight a few sections that generally take a bit more time. And so one of the more time-consuming sections is the coursework section. So in the coursework section, you will enter every college level course you have ever attended or completed. This section typically takes the longest to complete, as on average, applicants enter about 52 courses from usually 2 or 3 different schools. So be sure to click on the different links that we have available for you guys throughout the application that guide you to AMCAS video tutorials and just help you navigate the section, the section in general. So the work and activity section is where you have an opportunity to highlight your work experiences and the extracurricular activities you do outside of the classroom. You may add up to 15 entries in this section and can select up to 3 experiences as the most meaningful, which you'll be asked to reflect on in writing. So this is a great section to highlight your various activities and experiences that make you stand out from other applicants. The letters of evaluation section is where you will enter contact information for the people who will be submitting letters of evaluation on your behalf. Most applicants have 2 or 3 letters. Our website, which is amc.org/AMCAS, has more information about how to submit your letters to AMCAS. So please note, letters are not required for the verification process, so you do not have to wait until you receive those letters in order for you to actually submit your application. So now, once you've actually submitted your application and we've received all your official transcripts and our verification team starts, then our verification team will start this process. The verification process usually takes about 6 weeks and it's done on a first come, first served basis. You can keep track of the status of your application by logging into your application and clicking on the details link. We also post information about our verification timing on Twitter, so please feel free to follow us at AMCAS.info. Once your application is verified, it is then transmitted electronically to your designated medical school so they can start their review. AMCAS also provides 2 other letters that are central to the medical school application process. One is the AMCAS letter service, which allows your letter of evaluation writer to send 1 copy of your letter to AMCAS, and we will distribute it to each school you apply to. The AMC also facilitates criminal background checks on all accepted applicants. We do this to assist medical schools in evaluating the ability of an individual to attain appropriate licensing in the future. To help you fill out and submit your AMCAS application in the most efficient way possible, we have resources that can help you navigate this process. It includes guides, video tutorials, the instruction manual, and plenty of FAQs. You can find these video tutorials on YouTube at, youtube.com/AMCAS.info. And again, our Twitter handle for specific AMCAS updates is at AMCAS.info. Now, after completing your MCAT exam and your AMCAS application, you are well on your way to medical school. So now I guess it's time for you to actually figure out how to pay for medical school. So what AMC provides is a great resource. What I mentioned earlier is called FIRST. So FIRST is a great resource to help you figure out the financial aid process and how to pay for medical school. So FIRST actually stands for Financial Information, Resources, Services, and Tools. It is an AMC service dedicated to helping students, residents, and practicing physicians navigate the complexities of financial aid, student debt, and money management. All of this information as well can be found at the URL on your screen here. It's amc.org/first. So let's take a look at the cost of medical school. For the 2013 to 2014 academic year, the median cost to attend an in-state public medical school was $55,577, while the median cost to attend a private in-state medical school was $73,737. The cost of attendance includes tuition, fees, books, and supplies, as well as your room and board expenses. So we know that this may not be necessarily on your radar right now, but it's just a great tool to know for later when it's actually time for you to pay for these different costs. So 86% class of 2013 reported leaving medical school with debt from their education expenses. 63% of that class reported having debt of $150,000 or higher. And it's important to note that the median reported debt for the class of 2013 was $175,000. So we know you all might be thinking, oh my God, this is a lot of money. But the good news is that it's possible for you to attend and pay for medical school. And FIRST has an extensive suite of resources that can help you formulate a plan and to actually make these things happen. So some of the resources include things like the FIRST fact sheets and informational videos, repayment charts and timelines, and financial literacy resources. These tools were all designed to help you make smart decisions about taking out student loans and managing student debt wisely. FIRST also has an online tool, the MedLoans Organizer and Calculator, which is specifically made for medical students and residents. It allows you to enter, track, save, store, and run personalized repayment scenarios for your particular loan situation. You can use FIRST throughout your medical career as an applicant, student, resident, and beyond. So the AMC believes that pursuing a medical degree is a good investment in your future, and FIRST is here to help you guys throughout this investment. And now I'm going to pass it back to Lauren to cover a new resource AMC provides called PIVIO.
Great, thanks, Tia. So as Tia just mentioned, we're going to be talking about PIVIO. So as you can already see, there's a lot of information that you're going to need to keep track of while applying to medical school, and even more to keep track of during medical school, residency, and the rest of your career. The AAMC has created PIVIO. PIVIO is an online portfolio that allows you to track your records, letters, helpful resources, and keep everything organized throughout your full medical career. PIVIO helps you stay organized and keep track of essential documents such as your clinical experience, volunteer activities, research, exam scores, accomplishments, and so much more. So why should you use PIVIO? PIVIO keeps your information secure, it makes it much easier to fill out applications, provide information to your network, and track useful resources and case studies. And you can find more information about PIVIO at pivio.org. So once you've used all of our wonderful resources and you've completed all the various steps along the way, it's time to hear back from the schools that you've applied to regarding their admissions decision. And hopefully you will have received an acceptance letter or two. But if you're placed on an alternate list or denied, don't worry, you're not out of options. There may be other opportunities with your schools or programs, or you might consider enrolling in a post-bac program or taking a gap year to strengthen your experience and application. The AMC actually has a database that allows you to search for all the available post-bac programs across the country, so definitely keep our website bookmarked. So for all the resources that we've talked about today, you can find them all at aamc.org/students. You can also find information, tools, tips, and quick answers to your questions on our Facebook page, which you can find us at facebook.com/AAMCpremed, or on our Twitter feed at AAMCpremed. So with that, we want you to know that we're going to be with you every step of the way to medical school and throughout your successful medical career. And we have the resources and tools that are going to help you get there. Our mission is to serve and lead the academic medicine community to improve the health of all. Therefore, we're dedicated to you and your success as future physicians. We hope that you found this presentation helpful, and we hope that it encourages you to check out our website and stay in touch with us. With that, we're going to end here, and we're going to open it up for questions that you may have before you came, or questions that you have now after watching the presentation. So thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Janelle, Lauren, and Tia. I appreciate that great presentation. We're going to open it up to your questions. I'd like to introduce some of the speakers that we have with us today Inspiring Docs program. I have with me Julie Train, who is Student Resident Debt Management Director. I'd like to mention that Julie did work in a medical school in the financial aid office, so you have information directly from the source with Julie. We also have Katie Post, who's the AMCAS Communications and Program Support Specialist, and Dr. Jeffrey Young, who's Senior Director of Student Affairs and Programs at AAMC. I'd like to mention that Jeff has worked at several medical schools as the Dean of Student Affairs and Admissions. So again, we have a great resource in Jeff. He can answer from the point of view of the medical school. And we're lucky to have Tracy Speckle today, who is on the forefront of creating resources for the new MCAT exam. And she can answer a lot of your questions that you may have on how to prepare for that exam and what materials we have ready for you. So with that, Roxana, if you'd like to unmute your phone and start asking questions, ready for you.
Wonderful, thank you. So I want to open it up to our members, and I will call on them and they will speak. Does that sound like a plan?
Great.
Wonderful. So we have one member, her name is Raquel.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, how are you?
we're good, thanks.
Great. I have a few questions, but I'll just start with one for now. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little echoey. Is it possible to get closer to the phone?
Yes, it is.
Yes, one moment, sorry.
Computer?
Hi, can you hear me better now?
That's good.
Okay, so here's my first question. I'm going to be taking the new MCAT, and this is kind of a very vague question, but do you think that there are any major advantages to those people taking the new MCAT, especially maybe the first batch of test takers?
Lawrence, would you like to answer that?
That's a big question. Good question. You know, you'll be the first ones to take this new exam. This is what admissions officers actually ask us for. These changes are what they're looking for in their future, in training their future doctors. It's an exam for everyone, so there's pros and cons to both sides. So you're really like the trailblazers. Also, you're going to be, if you take the exam early, you're actually going to help us set our score scale for the next 15 years. So that's kind of a cool thing to be part of. I don't know if there's anything else, kind of.
One thing that I want to jump in and mention is that if you have questions about which exam you're going to be able to submit with your application, you go to AAMC.org/MCAT2015 policies. We've surveyed all the schools. You can find the schools you're interested in applying to and see for the next 3 application cycles which exams they're going to take. Most will take the old exam and the new exam for the next 2 application cycles.
Okay,
Does that
great.
help?
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, I also have another question, actually. This is more of just, it could be based on every individual person, but if someone is taking, a prep course with Kaplan or, any kind of prep course out there for the MCAT, I guess old and new, do you recommend that there's a certain amount of time that a person should spend studying on their own before taking the test? Or a better question is there such thing as waiting too long after you take a prep course to take your test?
This is Tracy Zeffel, and I work on the MCAT test prep products, and I really think that probably is a subjective thing, but we do find that most students tell us they study for 4 to 6 months, is what I hear probably for work. But again, it's really going to depend on your coursework and, how ready you feel. One thing we could recommend is you talk to your health advisors, and they may have a lot of good information about what you can do to prepare and
how long should I study for? It's really when you're comfortable and you're really ready to take it. So again, kind of an individual thing.
I would add, this is, for you, I would add that, I recommend that you be aware of your learning style. And I agree with what my colleagues have said, that you really have to know kind of circumstances that you learn the best in, the way you learn. Everyone may approach the exam somewhat different in terms of in the material, so you should be really aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are in terms of how you best learn material. And again, for most of the material you may have experienced through your coursework. Again, I think one thing I would recommend is that you not take it for granted and say, well, I'll just try it and see what it's like. But it's very important to recognize that once you take the MCAT and it's submitted, it becomes part of the record. So as a former dean of admission, I always looked at that and determined essentially what you were thinking about or how well you did or didn't do. In light of the courses that you also looked at how well you performed as an undergrad.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So that concludes Raquel's questions.
I have another.
Oh, unless anyone wants to open it to the room. So our next member, her name is Priyanka. We're just switching spots so we can get closer to the microphone.
Yeah, I have a question. So for the upcoming cycle, you're going to be getting applications from students who've taken both the old and the new MCAT. So how are admissions going to be comparing those two applications?
I didn't hear the end of that question.
Committees are going to compare the scores.
Was your question how admissions officers are going to look at the two scores together? Is that your question?
Oh, like for different, like since not everybody is going to have like the same score because they're taking different exams.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
a
how
good
is it going to be
question.
compared?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and we do get that question a lot. So the important thing to remember is that the exams do test different things, so they're a little like comparing apples to oranges. It's not something that you can look at and say this score is going to compare exactly to the new exam, and that's why we have two different score scales to make that clear distinction. We're talking with admissions officers frequently to give them tools to help them interpret the scores. One thing that we've been telling them is that they should use the way that they interpret scores for the current exam, they should continue doing the same way. For the new exam, we're actually going to be giving you and them percentile ranks. So it's a great way to see how you stack up and they'll see how you stack up against other examiners who take the new exam. And it's also important to remember that the MCAT exam is just one part of your overall application. Admissions officers do look at everything that comes in that MCAT application, from your personal statement, your extracurriculars, your work activities, your coursework. So letters of recommendation or evaluation. So just remember that MCAT is just one part, and it's not everything.
Okay, thank you.
Help?
So our next member, his name is Joel. He has a question. He's going to come up.
So you were talking about how applying earlier is better than applying later in the cycle, getting it out as early as possible. Can you talk more about the rolling admissions in colleges and how exactly it's better to apply earlier? Like how much more of an advantage is it?
Well, on a really fundamental note, the earlier you apply, the more seats are available in the class and for interviews. You know, schools may get thousands of applications, but only have 100 or 200 spots when they're entering class. And so if we've heard stories from applicants who are re-applicants who told us, my biggest mistake was I decided in November I wanted to go to medical school, and that's when evaluation and recommendations, to gather information that you need, and honestly, to assess if there are holes in your application, if there are things that you need to work on, or perhaps blemishes that you need to address and be able to address in the interviews. You can do that if you begin earlier. Anyone else want to jump in? I think that's all that we have on our end. I should mention though that don't just hit the submit button before you've had a chance to really read over your application. Little mistakes in grammar and spelling really stand out to admissions officers. Again, are looking for reasons to set aside your application maybe, because again, they've got thousands that they need to read through. So it's better to wait a little bit of a time, make sure everything is perfect, and to be the first one to hit submit on the day that you're allowed to.
Being organized is very critical, and as my colleagues have indicated, if I'm receiving anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 applications, and I'm going through a screening process, it's very difficult for me to read the application. There are errors, poorly composed, if your writing sample or your personal statement is not well written, then I have another 1,000 that I can look at, so I'm likely to set yours to the side. So I think it's very important to make sure that when you do submit, that the application can type and that you've had an opportunity to really be thoughtful about why you're applying for that. You should be clear about trying to highlight the experiences that you've had and demonstrate that your experiences will likely make you different than the next time.
This is Julie, and I would add from the financial aid perspective, make sure that you fill out your financial paperwork and applications on time as well. Each of the medical schools you apply to will have particular forms and procedures. Make sure you check their website and apply for financial aid on time and observe those steps. Because for institutions that have limited funding, they will take students' applications sometimes on a first-come, first-served basis, and if you don't apply for financial aid on time, you may end up missing out on valuable grants and scholarships. So make sure you check those deadlines too on the website for the schools that you're applying to.
Thank you.
I have another question. So for letters of recommendation or evaluation that we send, Stony Brook, our school does a different thing where they take our letters and they compile it and they also submit a committee letter. So how does that work with the MCAS?
It varies from school to school. For the most part, medical schools are familiar with the application process from the supporting documentation that is sent from your institution. So I think it's very important that you read very carefully the requirements that schools are looking for. They may say 3 letters of recommendation. One may need to be from a faculty member. Another could be from a friend or someone that knows you in the community. Others will indicate that a committee letter is acceptable. And so your school and your pre-health advisors should be very familiar with the way in which schools like to see the letters of evaluation come from. So it's very common that a school utilize a composite letter, I think that's what you're saying, where it is potentially multiple letters and then with a cover letter from your committee, or a letter that basically integrates all of the letters of recommendation or letters of evaluation that you may receive. So I don't think that it would matter significantly as long as you meet the requirements from the school. As colleagues have indicated, certain schools are also going to look at other variables, and so the letter of evaluation is just one of those variables that they're going to look at closely.
AMCAS application, letter service to submit that, that letter packet or a composite letter.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tia.
Okay, so
Are there
I have
any-
I'm sorry, I have a few questions that some members asked who couldn't be here today. One of them was that a member is planning to take biochemistry online, and that's because she is an out-of-state student and she cannot take it during the semester due to her schedule. And she wants to know, A, if medical schools can see that on the transcript, and B, how much of a difference will that make in her application?
Do you want to take the transcript part and I can answer the form? Okay. I believe that the answer to the transcript part, and I could be incorrect, but the answer once was last year that it depends. For some of your transcripts, you'll be able to tell if the course is online, and from other institutions, you really can't. It's all in how it appears on the transcript. For the other part of the question, it also depends. Really, it's case by case basis, and it also depends on the course itself. In the medical school admission requirements website, we have a section about the pre-medical course requirements, and there's a chart there that lets schools tell you if they will accept courses through community colleges, online, or AP. And basically, online coursework for the upper level sciences is frowned upon because of the lab component. So what you'll probably note if you look at the MSAR is that courses like English or perhaps psychology or sociology may be listed online, but your upper level and required science coursework most likely will not be accepted online. That is somewhat changing. There are that will accept it, but it's really not formal.
As another quick addition, regardless, you will need to still enter all of those courses on your AMCAS application, regardless if it's accepted or not. Every single course you've ever attempted, online or not, needs to be entered on your AMCAS application, or it could be returned to you for lack of it not matching up or transcript. Things like that.
Hope that's helpful.
That was, thank you. So we have another member, her name is Sahi. Just give us one moment to rearrange our members.
Hi. When you're taking into consideration launching experiences and clinical experiences, shadowing, letters of rec, essays, and everything, how much does the MCAT, what is the weight of the MCAT? Do medical schools look at it with a higher percentage compared to everything else? I know everything matters, but does MCAT matter more?
Jeff, would you like to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. So that's a great question. And I want to stress that right now the association is really encouraging medical schools to utilize the holistic admissions process, where they look at both metrics, which would typically be your GPA, as well as your MCAT score, but also take into consideration your experiences, your attributes, the things that you've done. And so when a school is going to look at school application, their first concern usually is whether or not you have the credentials that would suggest that you will be successful in medical school. And so schools will look at your coursework, your success, your grades there. And then they will also look at the MCAT to try to make some determination about whether or not your GPA and your MCAT are comparable. And so I think schools increasingly are looking at these other variables, as I indicated, but they're going to utilize the MCAT and your GPA to try to make a determination of whether or not you can actually do the work within medical school. My experience is that no school wants to accept a student and put a student in debt unnecessarily so. And so they want to see you be successful. So they're going to utilize the MCAT. The other piece I think that's important is that schools are also trying to find an applicant that meets its mission. And so schools may also have different missions. So schools may, for example, be focused on producing a scientist position, a physician scientist, one that has research experiences or can do research, and that's independent of the MD PhD program. There may be schools that have a mission of producing primary care physicians. So they may look at the criteria differently. But I think they will weight the MCAT because it predicts the outcome potentially on the first board exam. So that's the USMLE Set 1 exam, and they want to ensure that a student at least has the test-taking skills necessary that would make them successful. So I think one of the things I would encourage you to think about is, as you approach preparing for the MCAT, it is a standardized exam, and so not everyone can take standardized exams that well. So part of what we were talking about earlier, that it's important to recognize what your strengths are, try to understand how to become a better test taker, particularly on standardized exams, because as a physician, you're going to take standardized exams for the rest of your career. So I think it's important to recognize where your gaps may be, try to understand how you could potentially learn to fill in those gaps so that it maximizes your success on the MCAT. That make sense to you?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I have another question from another member who cannot be here today. And her question was, how do the medical school's missions look at humanities majors versus science majors?
I can take that one, if you'd like. It really does not matter what your major is. There is no perfect major for medical school. Everyone is looked at fairly, I guess you could say. In fact, there's special programs like one at Mount Sinai where they specifically have spots set aside for humanities majors. And what they found is those majors are just as successful, get residencies, and become physicians just as successfully as someone who's a bio major, or perhaps if you have a pre-med major at your school. So really, it's okay to follow your passions and take courses in that which interests you. Medical schools want to see that you're actually taking those kinds of courses and that you're a well-rounded applicant. Some people may have started in one major and then they realize closer to the end of their college career that perhaps they want to go to medicine. And for those people, during a gap year, they take upper-level science coursework or perhaps a post-bac pre-medical program to help prepare them to be better applicants. But the answer is there is no one perfect major or better major to have.
I would just add, medical schools are looking for diversity. And so I would encourage you to think about diversity in its broadest sense. So someone who is a biochemistry major, someone who's a music major, someone who's a psychology major, sociology, if you put those people in the learning environment, they all have a different perspective. They all have a way in which they may approach problem solving. And the goal is to try to have those groups work together and enrich and enhance the learning environment so that they can become more expanded thinkers when they're taking care of patients. So I think most schools welcome and value diversity in that sense. And I would also say that schools also look to non-traditional standards, students, where a student this might be their second career, or they may have decided to delay applying to medical school for multiple reasons, for whatever reason. But they bring a different level of experiences that I think my experiences enhances the learning environment. And that's really ultimately what medical schools are looking for in their students.
Thank you. I myself have a question, a few questions, and my fellow members can interject whenever they please. But my first question is kind of piggybacking on the question that I previously asked, is how are applicants who are planning to so-called branch medicine into new areas, how does that reflect upon the Board of Admissions and them as an applicant?
I'm sorry, we had a little bit of difficulty hearing you. We're all making the squinty-eyed face. Can you repeat that for us, please?
Yes, that's completely okay. My question was that, piggybacking on the previous question about the majors and the diversity that was explained. My question is, how are applicants who are trying to bridge a new field of medicine, maybe not field is the correct word, but a new area, and they want to apply that new area to medicine, how do they look as an applicant, and how does the admissions board see that?
Could you give an example of what you mean by new field of medicine?
Yes. So personally, what I want to do is I want to incorporate art and visual stimuli into medicine. So there are things as diagnostic tools, there are things as treatment, for instance, in Parkinson's disease. There's also art therapy, which is not medicinal based, but that has therapeutic effects. That's something that I plan on doing research in and expanding in medicine, because it's been present, but in very limited amount. So my question is, how does someone with that kind of goal and motive reflect upon the admissions board?
Well, I think that that's something that you would note during interviews and possibly in your application when you write your essay. You would also note it in your experiences, or if you've done specific research on it. If you look at the Aspiring Docs page, we have inspiring stories. We have numerous people from music backgrounds, veterans, people who have, we just did a story of somebody who still plays classical piano and is able to do both medical school and that at the same time. I think that that is something that enhances your application. And again, it's something that you would mention in those portions of your application. I think that you could most likely work out a research project during medical school, which is a requirement for a lot of medical schools to have a research component, where you brought that in. Many medical schools also allow you to do combined programs, so you may do a master's program where you focus in on that. But I would check with the individual medical schools you're interested in applying to, and also I would talk to your pre-health advisor so that they can help you strategize how you would work that conversation in.
Thank you. My other question is in reference to the application process and under the work experiences. I would like to ask you how it is preferred to have your work experiences organized and what the admissions board would like to see, because you're limited with your character space, and you would also have to juggle the laundry list of things that you've done and techniques that you've gained, as well as what you've gained from it. So the question is, how would you go about separating and describing your work experiences?
Okay, so as far as organizing them, again, this is also something that's individualized, per application. You can do it by a timeline, maybe you can put them in order of when you actually did the different experiences. You can enter different ranges of when you actually completed these experiences as well.